The Sooners continue to heat up in the portal, getting their transfer tight end and have an offensive lineman in their sights. On today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KREF Sports app. Josh, we got our first transfer portal tight end edition in Bauer Sharp, the Southeastern Louisiana product. Played the last 2 years there. We discussed him in our previous episode, a very productive player, ran the football a bunch in some Wildcat formations, also was utilized in the passing game, but had nearly 500 total yards, had 8 total touchdowns on the season. The Sooners get a veteran presence to add to what will be a pretty young tight end room.
Well, they needed some form or fashion of experience if they could find it out of the portal. And judging by the other offers here, right? Utah, Tennessee. I mean, there was some legitimate other high major power interest for Bauer Sharp. So that alone, you kind of follow the offers sheet, and that would be a good sign for Oklahoma too. So obviously, Oklahoma's not the only program that wanted Mr. Sharp, but OU's the program that lands Mr. Sharp. So you think about what this means for Oklahoma's tight end situation entering next season, and all of a sudden, a little bit more experience. We'll see if maybe Sharp is, I mean, the size, John, and the fact that he, was a quarterback, he feels like a versatile player that maybe they could use in a couple of different ways. I'll be curious once we get to that point where obviously Oklahoma's coaching staff, and in particular Luttrell and Joe John Finley, can comment about Mr. Sharp on how they plan to use him. I'll be curious if it's just going to be traditional tight end, or if maybe there will be some fullback, H-back type role here for Mr. Sharp.
Well, I got to imagine that they're going to utilize him in a variety of ways, because he does have a versatile athleticism that you're going to want to get the ball into his hands in some way. Southeastern Louisiana, they were more interested in getting him involved in the passing game in the short area of the field. And this is a guy that's making the transition to tight end. He's not at all a finished product, has to continue to develop. It's similar to like a Tyler Guyton, a guy that was a basketball player, started playing football, was a tight end, then transitioned to left tackle, and then, became a guy that might get drafted in the first round this year. Or you go back to Lane Johnson, again, a quarterback, transitioned to tight end, transitioned to tackle, and has become one of the best, players in the NFL. So, yes, okay, he doesn't have a ton of production, doesn't have a ton of experience, not a name that a lot of people know, but he's still making that transition. And, just trust the evaluations, trust the coaching staff that there's something to this kid that's going to allow him to be productive at the FBS level with a big time program like Oklahoma. How they figure out how to use him, that'll be a great question. I don't think this is a guy that comes in and says, well, we can't play anybody above him necessarily. He's going to be added to the competition. But again, it's the same thing we talk about all the time with the transfer portal. It provides you a veteran floor for the position that, okay, if Caden Helms, Devon Mitchell, Cade McIntyre, if these guys aren't ready to step into a bigger role, you've got a guy that's played some college football that you can get the ball to, and he can make some plays for you. Similar to a Tawi Walker, right? Tawi Walker came out of the JUCO level. When this year, when Marcus Major really wasn't providing a big, boost to your running game, Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes weren't healthy, and you really didn't have anywhere else to turn, Tawi Walker was your best option, and he was really good in stretches until Gavin Sawchuk got healthy and really took the reins and made the running back position his. This is why you add these guys with experience. Sometimes they come from the most unlikely places, but sometimes they can be big time additions to your program.
That's right. Yeah, you can't always, positively or negatively, right? I mean, we've seen times where somebody comes in pretty ballyhooed or was a blue chip recruit, maybe didn't work somewhere, they end up at Oklahoma and you're excited that maybe they're going to turn it around, and they don't, or they do. I mean, you see all sorts of stories, right? Tommy Walker's a good example just here recently of a walk-on kid that was a legitimate impact player for Oklahoma that's going to go somewhere else and really help somebody, right? So it's not just lock it up, throw it away, that here's an FCS addition for Oklahoma and it's not going to be super impactful. I love his story too. I'm reading here from Brian Clinton, contributor for OU Insider, that basically during an interview with John Johnson, who is one of the reporters at the hometown newspaper for Mr. Sharp, he paused the interview and said, "Wait a second. I think the head coach of the University of Oklahoma just FaceTimed me. Can I take that FaceTime?" And obviously he did, and he talked to Coach Venables, and the rest is history. But this is somebody that, every once in a while, I think it's kind of cool, John, that somebody that wants this type of opportunity from Oklahoma gets this type of opportunity from OU. So we'll see. I mean, Connor Neer would be a name that comes to mind from the last cycle that didn't wind up having the type of impact that maybe we hoped that he would. Now, granted, linebacker was sort of a position of riches for OU when you think about obviously Stutzman and others, but and tight end was not, right? So there's going to be an opportunity for Sharp to come in and impact things for Oklahoma, but the story's pretty cool.
Yeah, the story's great. And I think what's interesting is that he could come in and he could earn himself a starting role right away, or he could be a part of a nice rotation that allows Oklahoma to be a little bit creative with how they deploy their tight ends. They don't have to pigeonhole one guy into a specific role this coming season, and it allows you to work your young guys in as well. Say, hey, you know what? It's third and 8. We want to get Caden Helms and Devon Mitchell out on the field in this situation. Let them just go be playmakers, and they don't have to worry about doing the inline blocking thing. I think that's great for them that they can get on the field and, still kind of get their bearings under them. Because, Caden Helms has been with the program now 2 years, but hadn't really seen the field much. You got to continue to develop him and get him that experience. Well, having a dude that can come in and kind of do it all for you, has a little bit of that experience, but then also isn't someone that is going to keep these younger guys off the field necessarily. I think that's really, really, it makes for a nice addition and someone who can kind of help the tight end room kind of take that next step and develop him. And they're going to have a couple years with him. He's got some eligibility left. It's not just a 1-year rental for the Sooners. So the tight end room is getting a little bit deeper now with this addition. Another position that's got to continue to get deeper, and that's the offensive line. The Oklahoma Sooners are projected to land another offensive lineman. We'll talk about that coming up after the break here on Locked On Sooners. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. The next name on the transfer portal target wish list. If Santa Claus is coming to town, he might be bringing an offensive lineman to the Sooners, this in the form of Michigan State's Geno VanDemark. VanDemark was projected to land with the Oklahoma Sooners by Brian Doan, a national recruiting analyst for 247 Sports. This is a Michigan State guard who played 8 games, starting 6 of them at guard for the Spartans this year, played 4 games at guard in 2022, bringing 500 snaps of experience to the table if he were to land with the Oklahoma Sooners. But it answers a legitimate need that you have at the interior offensive line. at guard, because with Caden Green gone, Savion Byrd still up in the air. He's in the portal, but could come back. And McCade Matire going off to the NFL, assuming, he's out of eligibility at this point, so he's gone. You need to have an answer at guard, and potentially Geno VanDemark offers that.
How excited are you about the folks that are currently in-house for Oklahoma along its interior? Caleb Schaefer, Heath Ozida, Troy Everett, Josh Bates, Gunnar Allen. I mean, I would say Ozida and Bates, right? Those are the young guys that, okay, maybe we're not as excited as we should be because, well, we just haven't seen them because they're so young, right? And one full year, maybe those guys take big time leaps. But with that being the situation of who's sort of in the mix there for Oklahoma, OU obviously was in the market for some interior offensive line help. I still think they're in the market for some tackle help if they can go find it, and maybe even some more tackle help beyond that, and some more interior offensive line help beyond that, right? So I don't think that necessarily you're done if you add VanDemark here to go along with Brown, who you've already added out of the portal. But where do you kind of size things up at for OU in terms of the young talent? Obviously, you lost Caden Green, but and probably Savion Byrd, we think, right? But what about the other guys that are remaining here, like a Bates, like an Ozida?
Well, I think with Bates, Ozida, you can throw Logan Howland into the mix. They're young dudes that Bill Beatonbow obviously likes. He's fired up about having as part of your offensive line room, but you just haven't seen them play football yet. And that's part of the problem, is you just don't know what you have with them on the football field. You know what you got with them in the weight room, on the practice field, in the meeting rooms, but what are they going to be when they get out there on the football field? Part of Oklahoma's problem is they're going to be really, really young along the offensive line, outside of, the guys like Spencer Brown and maybe Geno VanDemark, Troy Everett, Caleb Schaefer. I mean, these transfer portal additions that you've made over the last 2 years, they're your veterans in the room, but Spencer Brown probably starts for you at right tackle. If you land VanDemark, he probably starts for you at right guard. But Troy Everett, Caleb Schaefer, they could play big time roles for your offensive line rotation, but you're going to have to kind of rely upon your young guys, Jacob Sexton, Josh Bates. There's a lot of optimism about him and his ability to take over at center. We might get to see a full run with him at center this week, or in a week and a half in the Alamo Bowl. And I think some of it's going to be kind of telling as to where Oklahoma's offensive line is, but they've still got a lot of work to do. They're building it up. They've got a nice group of players coming in the 2024 signing class, which we talked about in our last show, but there's still a lot of development that has to happen, both with the 2023 signees, the 2024 signees, and heck, you could even go back to the 2020 highly thought of 4-star prospects. But Jake Sexton kind of really got his first foray as a starter at the end of this season, and for the most part played pretty well. Has some work to do, but Jake Taylor we just haven't had a chance to see a whole lot of yet either. So there's still room for this group to grow, and it's the biggest question mark for the Oklahoma Sooners entering the offseason. You can look either side of the football, it's offensive line, and that's going to be so key, shoring that up for the Sooners when they go into SEC play, because the schedule is not going to do you any favors. It doesn't matter what week you're looking at, whether it's South Carolina and having to face Nicole Harbor, or you're facing Williams-Winery and Missouri later in the season. Of course, Alabama, Tennessee, all those teams are going to pose problems for your offensive line, but even some of those underrated teams will as well. So you gotta have answers along your offensive line. Otherwise, it could be a really, really long season for Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, and thinking about the schedule for next year, which maybe we're a couple months in front, but since we're on the subject, let's just go down this little rabbit hole, right? It is probably nice. As much as you say, oh my gosh, Alabama, LSU back-to-back, the fact that they're back-to-back late in the year is probably advantageous for Oklahoma from a scheduling standpoint as it pertains to the offensive line in particular, where you're going to be, in some way, shape, or form, probably unless there's a rash yet to come of transfer portal additions up front for Oklahoma, there's going to be some youth and quite a bit of it for Oklahoma up front along its offensive line. So the idea that your two toughest games, arguably, right? I mean, we'll see about Texas. That obviously would be the other game you'd look at as, okay, this is going to be pretty tough. It's always tough. It's Texas. But if Quinn Ewers makes the decision to come back, then, of course, it's all the more challenging the Cotton Bowl game. So generally speaking, though, two of them probably right there at the end of the year, and it's nice that you're going to have some lead-up time to sort of figure some things out. But the VanDemark potential addition, John, feels like for right now where Oklahoma's at, the experience that they'll be replacing, what they don't have in the way of proven production, it feels like a very, very important get if and when it happens for Oklahoma. And let's hope there's more news behind it, right? I do think Josh Bates, I do think Ozida, I do think Sexton, Taylor, there's still Logan Howland. There's still young guys to be excited about for Oklahoma, but let's call it what it is. If you could go find somebody that started some college football, that's been a nice little recipe for Oklahoma out of the transfer portal the last couple of years or so.
Yeah, I think they have to. And if you shore up your offensive line with Spencer Brown and Geno VanDemark, and that's your right side of your offensive line, I feel a little bit more comfortable going into next year, having question marks, or at least letting the competitions play out at center and left guard. I'm just assuming right now that Jacob Sexton is going to be the starting left tackle. And I'm comfortable with that because I thought he played well in the 3 games that he got to start at the end of the season. But letting competition kind of play out at left guard and center and seeing kind of who rises to the occasion, who's ready to take that job. Okay, I feel a little bit more comfortable about it than having to figure out right guard, center, left guard, that entire interior, and not having much experience at all. I felt less good about. But if the trend and if everything continues to point to Geno VanDemark landing with the Sooners, then I'll feel a little bit more comfortable about where they're going. You're getting now 2 guys with a lot of experience starting on your offensive line, and then you just got to figure out the rest of it between Schaefer and Troy Everett, Josh Bates, Heath Ozida, Logan Howland, Jake Taylor, Jacob Sexton, and then who knows? I mean, a dude like Eddie Pierre-Louis could be next year's Caden Green, a dude that can already put up 25 reps at 225 and, can run a sub 13 100-yard or 100-meter dash. Like there's potential there. I don't want to expect that that's going to happen, but I mean, who knows who could come out and just straight up earn a job, in their first season with the Sooners. So yeah, there's still going to be a huge question mark, but I mean, as we've seen over the last few years, there's been question marks at offensive line each of the last several years, and Bill Beatonbow and his crew have figured it out. They're going to just have to do it again, and they're going to have to do it with some younger pieces. Brent Venables, he's out there doing it again, trying to close on what potentially could be another top 10 recruiting class. We'll discuss that here on Locked On Sooners after the break. So Brent Venables and his staff of assistants got on the road to visit each of the 20 mid-year enrollees that they plan and expect to sign with the Oklahoma Sooners here in the early signing period and enroll at Oklahoma here in December and January. So it's fun to be watching what Brent Venables and his staff have done on the recruiting trail. We're kind of getting our prep work for signing, the early signing period done over at Sooners Wire, and just thinking of what the assistant coaches have done. Guys like Brandon Hall, who kind of fly under the radar a little bit because of the job that a guy like Emmett Jones has done or Todd Bates has done. But you look at what Brandon Hall has done since arriving in Norman, the Robert Spears Jennings, keeping that commitment in 2022, getting the Peyton Bowen flip in 2023, adding Dave McCullough, and then this 2024 cycle, adding a guy like Reggie Powers and, Jaden Hardy and Michael Patterson McDonald. Anyway, that's just an aside of where I wanted to go. But Brent Venables and his staff think they can flat out recruit. And he talked about it and in a piece or with the media earlier this week, where, just getting an opportunity to go and visit with families and see where these kids grew up, and just get an opportunity to kind of quote unquote close on what's going to be a really, really nice signing class for 2024.
man is taking advantage of those frequent flyer miles, racking them up, and saying hello to, well, a lot of names in this class for Oklahoma. 20 early enrollees is great news for OU. Speaking of the offensive line, a couple of those guys getting in early, not a bad thing, right? To get in that Schmitty system just that little bit sooner is nice. But obviously for Brent Venables in Oklahoma, one of the staples here, the entirety of the Venables era, from the moment that Bob Stoops sat up there and told everybody, hey, stop freaking out. No one person's bigger than the program. And then all of a sudden you had Venables hopping off the plane and giving us the boomer on the plane at Max Westheimer Airport. The one constant has been, with very little time, he and the staff was able to close in a positive way. So I just think we're getting another glimpse of that right here, right now. We talked about this in yesterday's episode, but there's not a lot of waffling, knock on wood, not trying to put it out into the ethos there and jinx us on anything. But it just feels like, again, the staff with Eddie Pierre-Louis, the final addition there, and just the lack of waffling elsewhere. Again, this staff knows how to close. And obviously it's important for Brent Venables and company to go out and be in 20 mid-year enrollees' homes. I just think that's awesome that that's the job, right? I get that. I'm not saying that, hey, Brent Venables is somehow better than every other head coach, because no other head coaches do this. But I do think that, like, the way he talks about it, John, he digs doing it and he values doing it and he sees the importance of it. And obviously for Oklahoma, again, they've been so successful closing these classes out. And I think that's because Brent Venables and his staff they A, enjoy doing it, and B, are good at this stage of the recruitment process where they finish it off.
Yeah, it's crazy, to think about college football coaches that don't actually enjoy recruiting, but there are actually a lot of them out there. I think Oklahoma had one before Brent Venables was here, a guy that maybe didn't enjoy recruiting as much. That's why all the NFL rumors always follow Lincoln Riley around, is because the word is that he doesn't really enjoy recruiting. The same was said about Dana Holgorsen at the end of his time at Houston. Same could be said, for Jimbo Fisher at times, but to see a guy who truly looks like he enjoys recruiting and talks about how much he enjoys recruiting, that's going to be what helps keep Oklahoma's recruiting success sustainable. Whether, the NIL is as competitive as everybody else or not, the guy is passionate about recruiting. He's passionate about building people up and developing people. And that's why he's had so much success over his first 3 recruiting cycles with the Sooners, and looks to be ready to land his 3rd straight, top 10 recruiting class here in, obviously the national signing day will come at, beginning of February, but with the early signing period, I'd expect most, if not all, of Oklahoma's, players to sign in the early signing period. And as you mentioned, Josh, there's going to be 20 of the 28 commitments that will be mid-year enrollees. The guys that we know for sure won't be enrolling mid-year: Zion Raggins, Jeremiah Newcomb, Devin Jordan, KJ Daniels, Michael Patterson McDonald. So that means you're getting guys like David Stone, Jaden Jackson, Eddie Pierre-Louis. You're getting some key members of this signing class in-house early, and that's going to allow them the opportunity to be impact players. The other thing Brent Venables said this week was kind of taking pride in the fact that so many freshmen, true freshmen and redshirt freshmen, played this year. They had the most snaps of anybody in the top 25 amongst true freshmen and redshirt freshmen. Not only does that bode well for Oklahoma continuing to develop its own roster, but it gives guys something to kind of hang their hat on. Like, hey, I can go into Norman and I can earn an opportunity year one. I don't have to sit back and wait my turn. If I'm good enough, if I can learn the playbook, if I can learn my responsibilities, if I can, what does Brent Venables talk about? Speak in the language. If I can do all that, do all the things I got to do physically, if I can stay healthy, then I might be able to carve out a role year one and not have to sit and wait my turn.
We probably need to do the full 2024 class just once over one more time before this thing, or as this thing gets finalized. I heard the conversation across the ref earlier today, and I think a lot of folks were in agreement that maybe Jaden Jackson is their most underrated recruit in this class. And John, I know you've been banging on that drum for months right here on Locked On Sooners, so we can have some of those conversations. What do you how exciting is the early signing day for you? Do you get geeked up about it? I mean, you and I mean, here we spend so much time, not necessarily like the Parker Thunes or the Josh McQuistions or a lot of folks that are truly, very much inundated in, okay, how is this recruitment going to swing? We follow it as closely as we can, but there's others that live it day to day. And yet I really enjoy the early signing day. I enjoy the spring signing day, even though obviously it's not what it used to be. This is the big one coming up this week, right? And I enjoy the rollout. I'm curious to see what Oklahoma is going to do on social media this week. So I do look forward to it every year.
I mean, this is what it all culminates in. This is what all of the, watching huddle highlight tapes and reading scouting reports and watching offers and following these recruits and their recruitment processes. This is kind of what it all comes to. I mean, yes, they have the commitment, but it's not official until they get that signature on the page, faxed into the NCAA, and then it's official. And so, like, it's similar kind of to the NFL draft in a way, even though they're not drafting these guys. It's okay. Now with the NFL draft, you might spend 4 months to a year or more on a draft class. Well, with the recruiting class, like, some of these offers are going out years ago, especially now that Brent Venables and his staff have been here and they've started to develop relationships. I mean, I saw an offer to a 2027 kid. And so, like, you're starting to get to know these guys as sophomores, freshmen in high school for the 2024 signing class. I mean, the David Stones, we've been following this recruitment for years. This has been the big fish of the 2024 signing class. When you get it, it's going to feel like a waft of relief comes over you. And I think that's the same for your favorite, whatever your favorite or whoever your favorite player is in this class. For me, it's Jaden Jackson. And Josh mentioned the most underrated player. I think it's becoming that he's not as underrated because people are catching on that. I mean, when you win IMG Academy defensive MVP over the 5-star defensive tackle from that you play with, I think that says a lot. It speaks volumes. And David Stone has been beating the drum for Jaden Jackson, not just this year, but for a long, long time too. And so all of it coming together for the early signing period is exciting because it's the foundation of the future. As much as the transfer portal is a recognized part of college football, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. We're not going to go back to the way things were. Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners want to build through the recruiting of high school players. That's what they want their foundation of their team to be. And so the early signing period, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. Getting those signatures, getting those national letters of intent, absolutely huge. And when it happens, when it's done, I think everybody can kind of take a deep breath and relax a little bit and then get back to building for the future. And then really focus in on the 2025 guys, because I mean, so much time and effort is put on 2024. Yes, they're looking, they're out there scouting and offering 2025, building relationships, talking to these guys. But now the 2025 recruiting cycle begins in earnest with a year out till their early signing period. But now I'm pumped. I'm excited. It's all the work that the coaching staff has done to finalize it. And then for us who cover it, it's, okay, all these guys that we spent so much time talking about, we get to continue to talk about because they're going to be Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, no, it's fun. And, for fans, I know there's probably varying degrees of how much fun do I have focusing. But once you're a signee, okay, I know that's giddy up time for some fans out there. It's, hey, enough of recruiting. But then once it's a Sooner signee, it's, okay, now we can talk about some signees. So it's a fun week. And obviously it's right here in front of the bowl game. So the college football calendar with the transfer portal, it's just a different world that we're living in and this early signing period has changed things a little bit too. But I think it makes it fun. Makes it fun for this time of the year, and we'll have plenty of those stories to pass along this week, and we'll get a big packet of information that maybe will be even more detailed than some of the stuff that we've known or talked about over the course of the last couple of years, John. So I kind of look forward to that from Mike Houck and company of, okay, what nuggets are they going to draw up on this group of signees? So it should be a fun week.
It's going to be a fun week. So congratulations to all the people putting their signature on the page and helping to or continuing to fulfill their lifelong dreams of playing college football at the FBS Power 5 level. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOddenRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all the social medias. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.